Hello everyone and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady and today I would like to talk about the new points for units in Warhammer 40k 9th edition. Games Workshop was nice enough to send me out this info early, so I currently have access to all the new points for every unit in 9th edition. And with this information, I decided to make a video going over most of the points changes and how I think it will affect the game and the way we build each army competitively going forward. Going over all the points differences in this video took a massive amount of time, in fact way more than I anticipated, so I didn't have the time to cover every unit in the game in this video. But I did try to get all the most popular units and some of the ones that I figured people would be curious about. I probably didn't need to do all this math, and I could have just made a video where I mindlessly read out all the new points costs without actually going over all the points differences or my thoughts on the points differences, but that's not what I like to do here on this channel. I like figuring out all the data that's needed to make a strong army so that you don't have to. So I went the extra mile and did the math for 10 hours before taking forward to actually make the video itself. I hope all this extra work is appreciated, and if it is, definitely hit that like button and subscribe to let me know that you want to see more stuff like this in the future. So with that said, thank you very much to Games Workshop for sending me out all these points early. It's greatly appreciated, and I guess let's jump into it. As you can see here, I haven't listed the actual points for each unit because that's not what I intended this video to be about. I want to talk about the point differentials, how much points each unit went up or how much they went down. And then I want to give my thoughts on whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether I think they'll still be put in competitive lists, and so on. So if you wanted to figure out the points for yourself so you can build your own armies and start testing stuff before you pick up the new book next Saturday that comes out with all these points, you can just reverse engineer it. For example, a Primaris Chaplain, just take the model that you have now with the points you have now, and then you would add 8 points to it. And there you go. You have the new points for the Primaris Chaplain to play with. So Primaris Chaplains went up 8 points per model. And I think based off a lot of the changes you're going to see throughout this video, I think that's perfectly fine. Primaris Chaplains are still going to be good. Same thing with Captain Ingravis, he went up 7 points per model. Smash Captains only went up 3 points per model, so they're definitely still going to be used, especially in chapters like Blood Angels, White Scars, Black Templars, stuff like that. Impulsors went up 28 points per model, and that's with the shield, like the 4-up invul. And I think that's a little much, because especially with Intercessors going up 3 points per model, meaning a squad of 5 is going to be 100 points, having that inside the Impulsor is going to be a little expensive. So it could still be worth it, but to be honest, I think I might try out some lists not using the 4-up invul, just so it's like more in line with the points we would have paid in 8th. It'll be a little less strong because of course that 4-up invul can come in clutch. But yeah, I think this is a little too much. Assault Centurions went up 18 points per model, which I think is warranted. They were everywhere at the ending of 8th edition, especially in like Raven Guard lists. And with only going up 18 points per model, I think they'll still be used, but they won't be spammed like they used to be. Scouts went up 3 points per model, which again doesn't make sense to me because Intercessors went up 3 points per model. But whatever. Tactical Marines went up 3 points per model. Aggressors went up 3 points per model. Eliminators went up 6 points per model, which again I think was warranted because they're not just going to go up +3. I think Eliminators were so incredibly good. They definitely needed to go up a little bit more than just 3, like the normal infantry stuff has been going up. Suppressors only went up 3 points per model. They didn't see all that much play. They were splashed into a list here and there, but that's not because they were overpowered. It was just because they were a good option. So yeah, 3 points, a 3-point increase makes sense with everything else that's happening in these point increases. Invictor Tactical Warsuits went up 29 points per model for the autocannon version, and the autocannon and the flamer are the exact same now. So if you want to play the flamer version, just take the 8th edition autocannon price and add 29 points to it, and that's either the autocannon or flamer variant. Devastator Centurions went up 25 points per model, which again is kind of warranted. They are super good, especially in stuff like Imperial Fists and Raven Guard, but now with them being 25 points per model, in my Imperial Fist list, I'll probably only bring a unit of 5 now instead of a unit of 6 to kind of make up for these points. And a unit of 5 is going to do pretty much just as much damage as a unit of 6 anyways. Redemptor Dreads went up 26 points per model. I'm assuming just because of buffs of like being able to move and shoot with heavy weapons normally now, being able to shoot into close combat, stuff like that. I think that's appropriate for the Redemptor Dread based off of how 9th edition is going to work now. Same thing with the Invictor Tactical Warsuit. I think both of these were warranted. It might seem like a little much, but when you compare it to a lot of the other armies here, I think it's perfectly fine. Thunderfire Cannons, though, I don't think I'll ever use one again. Mainly because at 92 points, it's incredibly good when your opponent can't deal with it, which means when your opponent doesn't have their own shooting that doesn't require line of sight. But when you go up against somebody that just has a couple basilisks or even a couple night spinners, anything that can shoot out of line of sight, your Thunderfire Cannon dies turn 1 most of the time anyways, especially on the new board. Because it's much smaller, you can't really deploy super far back in the corner and get away from that kind of shooting anymore. So having it go up plus 48 points per model, I think is a little too heavy-handed, and I personally won't be using one at all anymore. I'm sure there will still be people that will try them out, but I feel like they're only going to be worth this point increase in matchups where your opponent doesn't have out of line of sight shooting. Storm Talons actually went down 9 points per model, which was very surprising to me, because they already seemed good as is with 8th edition points, because now they ignore heavy, so they can hit on 2s basically, because they get +1 to hit ground targets, and they will never die because your opponent placed some units in a good position to cause it to crash and burn, because now they can fly off the board and then fly back on next turn. So bringing this down 9 points per model, I feel like we're going to see more Storm Talons on tables, I think. And then another change that I like to notice is Razorbacks went up 6 points per model if you use the Assault Cannon, or they went up 10 points per model if you use the Last Cannons. Black Templars, Helbrecht went up 5 points per model, the Emperor's Champion went up 5 points per model, Grimaldus went up 5 points per model, and Crusader Squads went up 2 points per model, and Neophytes only went up 4 points per model. So because of this, I definitely think Crusaders are better than Tacticals, but even still, I think I would still take the Intercessors every day of the week, and I don't think I would ever take a Neophyte in my life. Ultramarines, Captain Sicarus went up 5 points, Chaplain Cassius went up 10 points, Tigerius went up 5 points, Calgar went up 10 points, Gilliman went up 30 points, Cronus went up 5 points, and Tellian went up 5 points. So again, just in line with most of the game, a lot of characters in the game went up 5 to 10 points, with some of the bigger characters like Gilliman going up somewhere in between 20 to 30 points. Which I think is fine, it's just making everything cost more overall. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think they should have went a little more in depth, and like, this character goes up 4 points, this character goes up 5 points, yada yada. I think it should have been more finely tuned, but I'm still fine with it as is. It's not like we have tournaments to actually go play at anyways, and I assume we have a lot of time before tournaments come back, so there can be some fine tuning in between now and then. White Scars, Khan on Bike went up 10 points per model, and Kasaro Khan went up 5 points per model. Iron Hands, Iron Father Guy Fieros went up 30 points per model, which is kind of dumb. I'm thinking maybe Games Workshop figures this is going to be a vehicle edition, and because he can heal vehicles and they have stratagems to like keep vehicles alive and stuff like that, maybe they figured it was worth nerfing him because he also gives it the 5-up invul to infantry and stuff too. But I definitely think this was way too heavy-handed of a nerf. I don't think I would, if I played Iron Hands, I don't think I would ever use the Iron Father. Not at the points that he's going to be at when you look at stuff like only went up 5 points and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that he's going to be a little bit too expensive. For Imperial Fists, Captain Lysander went up 10 points per model. Pedro Cantor, I know he's a Crimson Fist, but he was listed here in Imperial Fist. He went up 5 points per model. Tor Garadon went up 5 points per model. And yeah, again, this is all like in line with the rest of the points changes, so I'm perfectly happy. If this guy went up 30 points per model, I would be absolutely furious because I love using him in my Imperial Fist list, but he only went up 5 points. I am perfectly okay with that. For the Salamanders characters, they both went up 5 points per model. Kavan Shrike went up 5 points per model. Then we get into the non-Space Marines Space Marines. Blood Angels, Asterath 5 points, Kerbolo 7 points, Captain Tycho went up 15, Mephiston went up 25, which I think is a little heavy-handed. Games Workshop has a weird stance on Mephiston because sometimes, like, I feel like they just nerf him out of nowhere. And it's happened a couple of times in 8th edition, and now it's happening again in 9th. I feel like he should have only went up like 5 or 10 points, not 25. Librarian Dread only went up 1 point per model, so why would you ever use Mephiston? Yet when you think about it, every other vehicle in the game went up a ton of points, but the Librarian Dread only went up 1 point? Yeah, 100%, I'd probably take the Librarian Dread over Mephiston every day of the week. Same thing with Commander Dante. I'm kind of weirded out why he went up 20 points per model. He wasn't really seeing all that much competitive play, at least at the top level. And so yeah, I feel like that was a little too heavy-handed of a nerf as well. Lombardi's 10 points. I think that's reasonable, only because Chaplains got so much stronger with their new litanies and stuff. Sanguinary went up 10 points. Tycho the Lost went up 15 points for, again, reasons unknown. Sanguinary Priest went up 20 points per model. Well, the jump pack version did, at least. Good news, though. Death Company only went up 1 point per model when you bring the chainswords, and they're actually the same points when you take them with the Thunderhammer. Reason being is because they went up, their base cost for the model went up 1 point, and then obviously chainswords and bolt pistols are free, and same with bolt guns, but the Thunderhammer actually went down 1 point. So yeah, when you take a Death Company Marine with a Thunderhammer, it's the exact same as it used to be, and when you take them with chainswords, they're just 1 more point than they used to be, which is perfectly fine when you consider stuff like a regular Tactical Marine went up 3 points per model. Death Company Dread as well only went up 7 points per model when you use the base loadout. So I feel like those are probably going to be seen a little bit more as well. Sanguinary Guard going up 6 points per model is alright. I don't think it kills them, but I think I would actually prefer Death Company over Sanguinary Guard now, depending on what I'm trying to bring them for. But I mean, if you want a big, heavy unit to protect characters and stuff, you're definitely going to want the Sanguinary Guard over the Death Company. But if you just want a unit that deep strikes in and murders whatever it touches, then Death Company is going to be your go-to. And then a Bale Predator, which has never really seen top-level competitive play at all, got an increase by 2 points per model. And this is when you bring it with like the flamer stuff, like so the heavy flame responses plus your Inferno Cannon, I think it's called. For Dark Angels, Asmodai went up 5 points, Azrael 10 points, Belial's the exact same, Ezekiel 5 points, Lazarus 5 points, Samael on Sableclaw, extra 10 points, Samael on Corvex is the exact same, Ravenwing Talonmaster is down 8 points per model. Deathwing Knights is plus 10 points per model. Ravenwing Black Knight is plus 6 points per model. Ravenwing Dark Shroud is minus 3 points per model. Ravenwing Landspeeder Vengeance is plus 13 points per model. Hellblasters are the exact same. Nephilim Jetfighter is plus 28 points per model. And Ravenwing Dark Talon is plus 30 points per model. So I think both of these, even though they might seem heavy-handed, again, they're in line with most of the vehicle increases in the game. What I find weird is Landspeeder Vengeances only went up 13 points per model, because those units are actually really good, if you guys didn't know. The Dark Shroud actually went down in points, and I'm assuming that's because you can't really stack hit modifiers anymore. Same thing with Talon Masters. Talon Masters are so incredibly good, and I felt like they were going to be in a ton of Dark Angels lists that were going to start being meta very soon before, like, Nurgle happened and all the tournaments shut down. Because I still believe the Dark Angels stuff that they got in Psychic Awakening did bring them up to like top tier, but nobody really had a chance to see that because tournaments like stopped the month after that book arrived. But yeah, so overall, I think when we go over all of this stuff, it's definitely a buff for Dark Angels, I think they're on the good side of things. Space Wolves, or Space Puppies as I like to call them, Murderfang only went up 10. Najal went up 10 points per model. 10 points per model, and when he's in Terminator armor, he went up 15 points. Ragnar only went up 5 points. Bloodclaws went up 3 points, which fits in with the tactical point increase. Wolfen went up 6 points per model when you bring them with the Thunderhammer Storm Shield. Wolfen Dreadnought went up 17 points per model. Thunderwolf Cav went up 3 points per model, which I think is actually really good, especially when you consider that Bloodclaws got the same points increase as Thunderwolf Cavalry, which are much more expensive than them. So yeah, I think this is a nice buff to Thunderwolf Cavalry that the Space Wolf players were looking for. And the Stormwolf actually only went up 6 points per model. To be honest, I feel like the Stormwolf was already overcosted anyways, so now I feel like it might just be appropriately costed. For Deathwatch, Watchmaster went up 10 points per model. Veterans went up 6 points per model with their Storm Shield and Storm Bolters, which was like the meta way to play your veterans. And that's because Storm Bolters went up 1 point per model and Storm Shields went up 2 points per model. And the Corvus Blackstar is actually down 31 points from what it used to be. So yeah, I think this thing, you're going to start seeing more of these, at least 2 of these in every Deathwatch list that you play against. For Grey Knights, we have Brother Captains went up 5 points, Chaplains went up 6 points, Grandmasters went up 5, Grandmaster and Nemesis Dread Knight went up 21 when you bring them with the Thunderhammer, the Gatling Silencer, and the Heavy Psy Cannon. And I think that's actually overall perfectly fine because these guys definitely got buffed with the new 9th edition rule set because they can shoot into combat now. They don't suffer -1 for moving and shooting in the first place. So yeah, I think 21 points increase is perfectly fine for them and puts them in a good spot. Librarians went up 7 points per model, Voldus went up 7 points, Drago went up 10, Strike squads went up 3 points per model when you bring them with the halberds or swords, or they went up 5 points per model if you bring them with the falchions. Because halberds and swords now don't cost anything, but the falchions cost 2 points. Terminators went up 3 points per model if you bring the halberds or swords, 5 points for the falchions, so same thing as the strike squads. Paladins went up 6 points per model with the halberds or swords, or 8 points per model with the falchions. With them going up 6 points, I would have liked it if it was like 4 or 5 points per model. But now this just means instead of running one big blob and one smaller unit of paladins, you'll probably just run the one big blob now and just have more strike squads or something. So overall, I think that's still fine. I think Grey Knights are going to be in a decent place still. I don't think this is an overall nerf in any way, especially when you have stuff like this. I think this is actually a decent change. And yeah, Apothecary only went up 4 points. Intercessor squads went up 3 points with the halberds, or 5 points with the falchions. And Purgation squads went up 6 points per model when you bring the Psy Cannons, or 4 points per model when you bring the Silencer. Sisters of Battle. Canoness is 5 points per model when you bring the Bare Bones. Blessed Blade is 10 points. Missionaries went up 7 points per model. Celestine only went up 10, which I think is perfectly fine. Junith went up 5 points. The Triumph of St. Catherine only went up 10 points. And for a Battle Sister squad, it's an extra 2 points per model, or an extra 3 points per model with a Stormbolter. Arcoflatulence went up 2 points per model. The Dialogus went up 5 points per model. The Hospitaller went up 5 points per model. The Imagifier is the exact same. Preachers went up 5 points per model. Rebentia Superior went up 5 points per model. Sisters Repentia went up 2 points per model. Zephyrims went up 3 points per model. Seraphim squad went up 4 points per model when you bring them with pistols, and they're the exact same as they used to be when you bring Inferno pistols, which is 25 points per model. Exorcists went up 25 points per model, which makes sense with the new blast rules, and again, being able to move and shoot heavy without penalty, even though most people didn't really move their Exorcists that much, except for in the case when their opponent was like hiding out of line of sight or something. But yeah, so that makes sense. 25 points is an extra 25 points is fine in my opinion. And then here's where it gets interesting. So Mortifiers and Penitent engines. Mortifiers only went up 4 points per model, and Penitent engines only went up 6 points per model. I already thought those units were kind of good, but I didn't really feel it was necessary to run them because they don't really get the bonuses from your your chapter tactic or whatever it's called for Sisters of Battle. But now, because they only went up, or Mortifiers only went up 4 points per model, and Penitent engines actually went down 6 points per model, I feel like we're going to see more of these splashed in lists here and there. An Immolator only went up 15 points per model, which makes sense, because again, Flamers shooting into close combat sounds pretty good to me. Custodies. So this is the army that I think had the overall win of this these points changes, because yeah, you'll see. Shield Captain, only 1 point increase. Shield Captain on Jetbike is a 10 point or 15 point increase. Trajan Valoran is only a 10 point increase. Custodian Guard model is the same as it used to be when you have the spear, and it's only plus 4 points per model when you bring the sword and Storm Shield. Wardens went up only 3 points per model when you bring them with the axes, and they're actually 1 point cheaper when you bring them with the spears now. And Vexilis Praetor is an extra 1 point, that's it. Venerable Contemptor Dread went up 20 points per model, which again makes sense with all vehicle changes. And the jet bikes only went up 5 points per model. So overall, I think this is definitely a win for the Custodies. They didn't really go up all that many points when you consider that they're elite army and they already cost a ton of points to begin with. So yeah, I think Custodies are definitely going to be good this edition. Maybe not top tier, but I would think at least high tier, especially with the new rules that they just got with Psychic Awakening. And yeah, I'm looking forward to playing my Custodian army a bit more now and testing it out. All the Assassins went up 15 points per model, so they're all at 100 points now. For Astra Militarum, I mean Imperial Guard. Company Commander went up 5 points per model. Pask went up 13, which is actually really good, again, when you consider all the points changes for vehicles in general. But that's only when you take him with the Battle Cannon and Heavy Bolter. I didn't do him with sponsons. Tempester Prime is an extra 5 points per model. Strachan, Yarick, Creed, Harker, all an extra 5 points per model, which in my opinion is weird, and that's what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about the Space Marines. Why do Space Marine characters like Ragnar and Khosrow Khan, why do they go up 5 points per model, but Yarick, Creed, Harker, Strachan went up the exact same amount? It doesn't make sense to me, you know what I mean? Like, Strachan is definitely nowhere near as good as like Khosrow Khan. Like, these guys are, like, their stat lines are just not as good as those other Space Marine characters, so why did they get the exact same points increases? It doesn't make sense to me. I feel like these should have been +3, +4, you know what I mean? Like, just a little bit smaller. It would have made a little bit more sense in my opinion. Conscripts went up 1 point per model. Infantry squad went up 1 point per model, so that's 5 points per model, essentially. And that makes sense, too. They shouldn't go up 3 points per model like a Space Marine does, which is what I was saying earlier. I guess maybe Games Workshop, for like these characters, they just felt like they were undercosted in the first place, so that's why they're putting them up 5 points. I don't know. But I thought, to be honest, based off of like comparing them to Space Marines, I thought they were appropriately costed. Scions went up 2 points per model when you bring the Hotshot Lasguns, but only 1 point per model when you bring the Plasma Gun. Astropaths went up 4 points. Bulgrins are the exact same with their baseball bat and shield loadout. So I think that unit is still going to be good going into 9th edition, especially now that Thunderfire cannons are probably not going to be seen as much. So yeah, I feel like Bulgrin are going to be coming back. Commissar went up 4 points per model, which makes no sense because he's absolutely useless with the way morale works now in 9th edition. Ministorum Priest went up 5 points per model. Platoon Commander went up 5 points. Armored Sentinel went up 10 points per model when you bring it with the Plasma Cannon, because that's a loadout I've seen most people use, so that's why I did that one. Hellhound went up 19 points per model, which again fits in with most of the vehicles in the game, so I think that's fine. Scout Sentinels are the exact same as they used to be with multi-lasers, and again I did it with multi-lasers because that's the loadout most people chose with Scout Sentinels, because they were really just to go up the board and stop your opponent from deep striking so close to you on turn 1 with stuff like the jump. Basilisks went up 17 points per model, which I find weird because sure, they benefit from moving and shooting, but they never need to move because they can shoot 5 tables over without needing to see it. And then it's not like they can shoot into close combat either because their Earthshaker cannon is a blast weapon. So yeah, I feel like this might have been a little bit too much, maybe a 10-point increase. 17 is not horrible, but I mean, I think it's personally just a little bit too much. So a regular Leman Russ went up 30 points per model when you bring it with flame responses and a battle cannon, which is a loadout I've seen a lot of people talking about bringing their Leman Russes with. Well, it's an extra 30 points compared to what that same loadout would be now. If you just take it with just the battle cannon, it's still an extra 28 points compared to just taking a regular Leman Russ with a battle cannon, which I guess makes sense compared to other vehicles in the game. But again, your battle cannon can't shoot into close combat, so it would only be your little heavy bolter that you have on the front that can shoot in close combat. And they already ignored moving and shooting with their heavy weapon, at least when they moved under half their distance. So I guess they can move their full distance and still get this and just not get the double shots with their turret with grinding advance. But still, I feel like that's a little bit too much. I would have liked to seen it be like 20-ish points. 28 I don't think kills it, but yeah, it's just, I don't know, I would have liked to see 20 points and I would have been more excited to play with Leman Russes. As for the Executioner though, because you're going to want to take the Executioner with the Plasma Sponsons because it just makes sense, and I messed that up again, it's plus 50 points compared to what it used to be. And again, like I guess, oh yeah, the blast stuff kind of makes sense, but as I'm going to say in a video you guys are going to see really soon, I actually think the blast rules are kind of a little overhyped in my opinion. To summarize it real quick, it's because in the games that I tested blast weaponry, I was still shooting those weapons at vehicles and monsters because those were the weapons I had to kill vehicles and monsters. So very rarely in my games did I actually shoot blast weapons at Horde units. That's not because we weren't playing with Horde units. In fact, my buddy that I played with, I told him, bring some Horde units, I'm going to bring some blast weapons in guard, and we're going to test some stuff out and see how I like it. And I noticed that playing strategically in the game, I was still shooting the blast weapons at his tanks and vehicles because that's what they're really good at killing, because they're multi-damage weapons. So yeah, I think blast is good, just it's situational because you're going to want to usually use those weapons to kill the tanks and monsters anyways. Also, what happens when you go up against an army that doesn't have any vehicles or tanks and all of their infantry units are minimum size and under 6 models, so you don't get any of the blast rules. You're paying for all that extra stuff for absolutely no reason. And with the blast rules being a thing, I've already seen many people tailoring their lists to have either 10 models instead of 11 models or 5 models instead of 6+ models, so that way they don't get screwed over by blast stuff. So again, at least on a competitive level, I think the whole blast rule is a little bit overhyped, And I think Games Workshop is charging too many points for those weapons, especially again, because you can't shoot into close combat with those weapons. So you're also paying for the buff that vehicles can shoot into close combat, but they can't shoot into close combat with those weapons. And then those weapons' extra profiles are barely going to be used, at least at top level competitive play, in my opinion. So yeah, I think they're being costed too much for no reason. So yeah, I think the downsides are actually far greater than the upsides using blast weapons on stuff like Leman Russes now. At least that's my current thoughts on it. That could change in the future. I've only played about 6 or 7 games, but yeah, I think that's I think those points increases are too much. And then also plus 35 points for a Punisher Leman Russ with no sponsons. Mana Core went up 22 points per model, which I think is fine. Wyverns went up 22 points per model, which I think is actually pretty good, because that type of blast weapon is going to target your opponent's infantry, and it's designed to kill hordes, whereas stuff like these plasma Cutioners are designed to kill like elite stuff. So yeah, the Wyvern itself makes sense going up this many points. I'm okay with that. And Valkyries actually only went up 3 points per model. So yeah, might see some more Valkyries and stuff like Scion armies. For the Admech, the Dominus is the exact same points. The Angelseer went up 5 points. Manipulus went up 5 points. I couldn't find the Daedalus or whatever he's called, so sorry that he's not here. Call went up 10 points. Breachers went up 5. Destroyers 5. Rangers 2. The crappy Electro Priest went up 2. The good Electro Priest went up 3. Dragoons only went up 2 points per model. Castellan Robots only went up 10 points per model. Scorpius Disintegrators went up 39 points per model. Dune Crawlers went up 23. And Scorpius Dune Rider went up 27. So for the Dune Rider, actually I think that's okay, because they do come with a decent amount of guns. The Dune Crawler, I don't think makes any sense. I think this should have been a little bit less. The Disintegrator makes sense though. That unit was being spammed everywhere in AdMech lists, so I guess it makes sense that it went up that many points. So it would make people consider bringing like Dune Crawlers and other units. Castellan Robots only going up by 10 actually makes me want to consider testing them out a little bit more, especially with the fact now that they can shoot into close combat. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. Dragoons only going up by 2 points per model. I think that's huge. I think I would definitely still play Stygies. I'd still play Stygies and use the Infiltrating Dragoons. That just sounds awesome. Electro Priest, 3 points per model, that's fine, makes sense. Rangers, 2 points per model, makes sense. Destroyers went up 5, which I think is fine. Breachers went up 5. Call went up 10. All of this I think is perfectly fine. For Imperial Knights, the Helverin went up 18 points per model, which is fine. Warglaive only went up 8, which I guess is because nobody was really playing with Warglaive, so that makes sense. The Castellan is actually down 69 points per model. I don't think that means it's going to come back and start dominating the meta again, but I do think it means they're going to pop up more often than they were at tournaments. Yeah, because at least it doesn't have the 3-up invult and all that kind of stuff now. But yeah, I still think at minus 69 points, it's actually an option for some armies to bring now. So yeah, be prepared if you go to play in any tournaments. Be prepared for at least a couple of players to be there with a Castellan. Crusaders went up 22 points. Knight Errant went up 22 points. Gallant went up 28, and a Warden went up 26. Which all makes sense. These are all vehicles. And when you consider how expensive these things were in the first place, this is actually a small percentage of their points being increased. So I think these are actually like, they're negligible. Like they don't really matter. Then we get to Chaos Space Marines, where I believe they are the ones that got screwed the most. Demon Prince with Wings is now 35 points more than it used to be. Yeah, that's a little heavy-handed of a nerf in my opinion. Dark Apostles are an extra 8 points per model, which is fine. I would have liked it if they were only an extra 5, like the rest of the Space Marine stuff, but whatever. Disco Lords went up 35 points per model, and Sorcerers went up 2, Abaddon went up 10. Cultists went up 2 points per model for some reason, when a Guardsman only went up 1 point per model. Yeah, an extra 2 points per model. I don't think I'll ever use a Cultist until they get lowered again. Chaos Space Marines went up 3 points per model, which is okay. I still, especially after this change, I think Chaos Space Marines are going to be the go-to troops choice for 9th edition. But Chaos Space Marines aren't all that good, so the go-to troops choice is actually mediocre at best. So yeah, I'm kind of salty about this. Chosen went up 3 points per model. Berserkers only went up 2 points per model when you take them with the chain sword and chain axe. So I think that's fine. I think World Eaters players will be happy about that. Noise Marines went up 4 points per model when you take them with the blaster, and only 1 point per model when you take them with the Blastmaster, which I think this is a little bit too heavy-handed of a nerf. Noise Marines weren't all that good before the changes. I guess they got some buffs with Psychic Awakening, but I'm still not super convinced on them. So yeah, I kind of feel like this was not necessary. Terminators only went up 1 point per model, which is good. That's one good thing Chaos has. Defilers went down 2 points per model when you bring them with the autocannon and the Scourge, which is the way I personally would bring them if I was going to play with them. And they definitely got buffed as well. So Defilers actually come out pretty good with this change, I think. And we have a reason to put Defilers on the table now. Forage Fiends only went up 7 points per model, which again I think is amazing. I actually think, based off of all this stuff that you see right here, I think that basically, if I were going to play Chaos Space Marines right now, I would use these units plus 1 or 2 Disco Lords. And I would want to use 3 Disco Lords, but because of this huge price increase, I'd probably only use 2, and then the rest of the list would be all this stuff. And that's how I play Chaos Space Marines now, is basically Demon Engines, which is cool. I think Demon Engines will be a thing now, with like maybe some Chaos Space Marines splashed in to like grab objectives, and that's about it, to be honest. Or maybe even some Bikers. I think I saw Bikers are 25 points. I'm not sure if that included the bolt guns. I think it did, so I think they're 25 points, which I think is about the same as they used to be, so yeah. Death Guard. Demon Prince again got fucked. Lord of Contagion went up 3 points per model. Mortarion went up 20, which I think is fine. Typhus went up 20, which I think is too much. Cultists went up 2 points per model because what the fuck? Plague Marines went up 2 points per model. Poxwalkers went up 2 points per model. Blight Lords went up 2 points, or plus 6 if you bring the Flail. Foul Blight Spawns went up 8 points per model. Possessed went up 3 points, which I also had here and I just forgot to mention. Foetid Bloat Drones went up 17 points, and Plague Burst Crawlers went up 30. So yeah, the Plague Burst Crawler, I can kind of get behind it, but again, I kind of wish it was only like plus 20. Maybe plus 25, plus 30, I think is just a little too much. But yeah, Plague Burst Crawlers, I've seen them tested in 9th edition with their old points, because I didn't have access to these points until like yesterday. But Plague Burst Crawlers are definitely better now with all the changes they did to vehicles. But is it worth increasing their price by 30? Maybe, because were they undercosted before this? Maybe. So yeah, I guess it actually makes sense, and it's just my bias of wanting to keep competitive stuff competitive. Foetid Bloat Drone is another thing too that I kind of like. 17 doesn't seem like much, but I still wish this was only like 10, because Foetid Bloat Drones didn't really see all that much play anyways. Plus they got nerfed as well. They got nerfed / buffed because they can't leave combat and shoot anymore, but they can just shoot into the combat that they're in now. So it's a nerf / buff, and I would think it's overall a nerf, because I would rather be able to leave combat and shoot at the unit that I actually want to shoot at, rather than being forced to shoot at the unit that my opponent picked because they charged me with it. So yeah, I think that this should have been a little bit lower. Thousand Suns. So this is, I think, an overall buff, because yeah, sure, Demon Prince is gone now, never going to use one again. But Exalted Sorcerers and Exalted Sorcerers on disc are 20 points cheaper than they used to be. Armon only went up 19 points. Well, I say only, that actually is still a pretty big increase. And Magnus went up 20 points. Cultists again, for some reason. Rubrics only went up 2 points. Zangors only went up 1 point, and Scarab Terminators went up 5 points. But looking at this list, I think I can make a very good, I wouldn't want to say like tournament winning list, but it could definitely hold its own and do all right. I think I could definitely make a good Thousand Suns list now out of all the stuff that's here. Plus maybe even like when you add in some like Defilers, because Defilers are the same points in Thousand Suns as well. So yeah, I think you can make a decent Thousand Suns list out of all that stuff, especially because these points increases weren't too much. These ones went down. So not only do you like, just don't use the Demon Princes. Use Exalted Sorcerers or Sorcerers on disc instead, so you can save points, which actually makes up for these points increases. So when you think about it, this stuff is playing with its old points in a way, because these make up a good chunk of the points. You know what I mean? For Chaos Demons, Be'lakor went up 20, Bloodthirster of Incessant Rage up 20, Bloodthirster of Unfaded Fury up 30. You know what? I'm not going to read all these, You can just take a look at the screen for yourself. Basically, a lot of the big demons went up 20, a lot of the little ones went up 5, and there's a couple that are somewhere in between, except for the Demon Prince, which just again got destroyed for some reason. Bloodletters went up 1 point, Demonettes stayed the same, Plague Bearers stayed the same, Pink Horrors went up 1, Blue Horrors went up 2, Brimstone's up 2, Nurglings are the same, Fleshhounds are 3, Screamers are 3, blah 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 blah. So when it comes to the troops choice, I don't agree with the Bloodletters. I think they should have stayed the same. Demonettes, I'm perfectly okay with. That makes sense. Plague Bearers, I'm perfectly okay with because they were already overcosted in 8th edition because of their heavy-handed nerf after Jim Vessel dominated with his Chaos list. So yeah, I think that I'm fine with them now. But yeah, in 8th edition they were too much, but now that they're the same in 9th edition with everything else going up in points, I think Plague Bearers are fine. Horrors, I'm okay with going up 1 point per model, but Blue and Brimstone Horrors I think is too much. Nurglings, I'm perfectly fine with. And then these 4 things, I think they shouldn't have went up any points at all. In hindsight, while editing this video, I just remembered how morale works again, and I actually think that these points increases on the little horrors are actually okay. Otherwise, we might go back to the days of people just spamming tons and tons and tons and tons of these little models just to take up the entire board and do nothing except not let their opponent move. For Craft Worlds, Autarch +7, Autarch Skyrunner +5, Farseer +5, Farseer Skyrunner +3, Spirit Seer 5 points per model, Warlock 5 points per model, Warlock Skyrunner +3, Avatar Kane +15, Eldrad +10, Jane Czar +10, Dire Avengers +2 points per model, Guardian Defenders +2, Rangers +3, Storm Guardians +3, Shining Spears +5, Wind Riders +2 with the catapults, +7 with scatter lasers, or +4 with cannons. Crimson Hunter Exarch is +24 points per model, Hemlock Wraithfighter is +20 points per model, Dark Reapers are +4 points per model, Fire Prisms are +28, and Night Spinners are +33. So yeah, I think this might be a little bit too much, but I guess they were tired of seeing Night Spinners in every Eldar list, so they wanted to nerf them to make other options more appealing. Fire Prism went up 28, which I think is a little bit too much. These I think are a little bit too much, because one thing I don't think people realize is that flyers will never get to shoot into combat unless they can hover. Reason being is because a flyer always has to move, otherwise it dies. So you can't stay there long enough to shoot into combat. And now because of the rules, where fly keyword no longer can shoot after it moves, you can actually stop flyers from shooting in this edition by tagging them in combat with something that can fly of your own. So yeah, I think that those points increases were a little bit too much, especially for the Hemlock Wraithfighter, who not only can't shoot into close combat, but he doesn't benefit from the ignoring heavy and shooting because he's got like an auto-hitting weapon anyways. So yeah, I think that's a little bit too much. Crimson Hunter Exarch, basically the same thing. I think that's a little bit too much as well, especially now because these things can no longer be -2 to hit either. Because even if you bring them into Laytalk, modifiers to hit and wound don't stack anymore. So yeah, I think that those were a little bit too much. Shining Spears, though, makes sense. Dark Reapers makes sense. And then Jane Czar, Eldrad, I feel like that might be a little bit too much, but it's not too bad, I don't think. And yeah, everything else seems about right when you compare it to everything else that's happened. Then we get to my beloved Drukhari. Archons went up 4 points, Homunculus went up 5 points, Succubus went up 5 points, Drazar went up 5 points, Lilith went up 5 points, Irian Rakarth went up 5 points, Cabalites went up 3 points when you take them with their poison, or only 1 extra point when you bring them with a blaster, and that's because blasters are 2 points cheaper now. Racks are +3 points per model, Witches are up 3 points per model, Grotesques are an extra 10 points per model, Incubi are an extra 2 points per model, which actually makes me consider taking Incubi in Drukhari now in my competitive list. Same with Mandrakes. Ravagers went up 25 points per model, which I think is a little too heavy-handed with all the nerfs that they've received. Well, not necessarily nerfs, they just weren't buffed by the changes, other than being able to shoot into combat. But the thing is, if somebody charges my Ravager, the Ravager's probably dead. It's a paperweight. It's very offensive, but not very defensive. So it's most likely never going to get its chance to shoot into combat anyways. And then when it comes to the other buffs that vehicles got, like being able to move and shoot with heavy, well, all our weapons are assault anyways, so we already had that. So yeah, to me, it doesn't make sense that the Ravager went up that many points, but it is what it is. Talos went up 17 points per model, and that's when you bring them with the Scalpel, Flails, and Haywire guns, which I believe was the meta way to bring them. Raiders went up 15 points per model. That's when you bring them with the Disintegrator cannons. Venoms went up 25 points per model when you bring the double cannons, which is the way I used to like to play them. And 20 points per model for one cannon. So what this kind of tells me is I'm going to be using Raiders instead of Venoms. Which is so sad because I have 14 Venoms. Razor Wing Jet Fighter went up 25 points. Void Raven went up 30 points. So again, these ones I think are a little heavy-handed for the same reasons that I said that these ones are a little heavy-handed. But yeah, again, it is what it is. So overall, I think Drukhari got hurt a little too much. At least the way that I played Drukhari, which was like Venom spam. Yeah, I think Venom spam is dead now. So gonna have to figure out a new way to play the army, which, to be honest, with the new way that you build armies in 9th edition, I believe just bringing 3 patrols, 1 Coven, 1 Cult, 1 Cabal, that's going to be the way to play Drukhari going forward. And yeah, it's not going to be like spamming Cabalites inside of Venoms. It's going to be bringing stuff like I assume it'll be like Raiders, a bunch of Talos, maybe a Ravager or 2, but with Dark Lances instead of Disintegrator cannons, because they'll be cheaper that way. Because Dark Lances are actually only 15 points and Disintegrator cannons are 25. So yeah, Ravagers with the Disintegrator cannons will probably be better now. Mandrakes are still fine, Incubi are still fine. Grotesques I actually think are still fine, even though they got a lot of points. They were kind of undercosted in my opinion anyways. At least when you bring them in Prophets of Flesh. Witches, Racks, and Cabalites though, I feel like shouldn't have went up 3 points. Like when a Space Marine goes up 3 points, these guys should have only went up like 2 points, if anything. Moving on, Harlequins. Shadow Seer went up 5 points. Troop Master went up 5 points. A Troop Model went up 3 points per model, or +2 if you bring it with a Kiss, or +1 if you bring it with a Fusion Pistol. And again, that's comparing it to the old model with a Kiss and the old model with a Fusion Pistol. Death Jesters went up 5, Solitaire went up 4, Skyweavers went up 9, Starweavers are the same. So overall, I think Harlequins are actually, they made it out pretty good. I honestly think Harlequins made it out pretty decent. I don't think it's enough to put them in top tier, maybe at the bottom of high tier. I think overall though, Harlequins definitely are going to be pretty good. Skyweavers, I think this might have been a little heavy-handed, but that's because whenever you saw Harlequins, it was mostly just Skyweaver spam. So that was probably just to get rid of the Skyweaver spam and to make you actually consider bringing troops. Inari, Vizark went up 5, Incarn went up 10, Ivrain went up 5. Standard stuff when you compare it to everything else in the game, so I think it's kind of negligible and doesn't really mean much. For Necrons, the Cryptek went up 5 points, Destroy Lord went up 5, Lord went up 5, Overlord went up 5, Imhotep went up 10, the Deceiver went up 10, the Nightbringer went up 10, Immortals went up 3 points when you bring them with Goss or Tesla. Warriors only went up 1 point per model. Lich Guard went up 2 points per model with the War Scythe or with the Sword and Shield. They're the exact same. Triarch Stalkers went up 25 points per model, which makes sense with the new vehicle rules. Canoptic Scarabs went up 2 points per model. Canoptic Wraiths went up 3. Destroyers went up 5. Heavy Destroyers went up 3. Monolith is down 30. And so between this and the Warriors, really depending on the new rules that we know they're going to get probably sometime soon, based off of all the new models that they have, I assume a new Codex is around the corner. Yeah, Monoliths might actually be playable now. We'll have to wait and see for the rules, but I mean, this is a good start. Ghost Arcs went up 20 points per model. Doomsday Arcs went up 20. Doom Scythe went up 20. Overall, I think all of these changes are fine for Necrons, but I don't want to judge them right now because, again, I assume a new Codex is around the corner, so we'll have to wait and see their new rules before we can accurately judge this army. Every other army, though, I'm pretty sure they're stuck on their 8th edition Codex for at least a few more months, so that's why I feel comfortable judging the other armies, but these ones, we'll leave it until they get their new Codex. And then for the Orcs, we got the Deathkiller Wartrike, which went up 5 points. Gazgal only went up 15, which I think is pretty nice. Warboss only went up 3 points when you bring him with a custom Shooter and Claw. Weird Boy went up 13 points, which is a little heavy-handed, but I guess it makes sense because Weird Boys are pretty damn good. They offer a lot of utility towards the Orcs, so yeah, I think that might be justified. Maybe a little bit too heavy-handed, but it is what it is. Big Mech was custom force field, only went up 5 points, which is really good. Boys only went up 1 point, which is very surprising when we look at stuff like Cabalates going up 3 points per model. Gretchen went up 2 points per model, which I guess was probably to incentivize just playing boys instead of the Gretchen, so your army actually looks like orcs instead of goblins. Storm Boys went up 3 points per model, which I think might be a little bit too heavy-handed, but I guess they want you to bring more boys instead of Storm Boys. Ludas went up 3 points, which makes sense. And the mech guns, the Smasher gun variant, went up 7 points per model, so they're a little bit less spammable than they used to be. And then that's pretty much it for this video. I didn't get to Tau, Nids, or Genestealer Cult because as I'm recording this, I've been working on this for like the last 2 days, by the way, and it's almost 3:30 in the morning, and I still need to edit this video and then get it ready to upload tomorrow. So yeah, I didn't have the time to finish this stuff. So I think I'm gonna have a couple units posted in the pinned comment down below. So if you do play Tau, Nids, or Genestealer Cult, go check the pinned comment. And if the information isn't in the pinned comment at this moment, it will be at some point today after I wake up from my long nap. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, even though now in hindsight, after I've done this, I'm not sure if this is that interesting of a video to most people, because it was mainly just me spouting off points, which is something I said I didn't want to do in the beginning. But I felt like I gave you at least how many points everything went up instead of just what their new points is. And that allowed me to give you some more thoughts on what I think made it out the best, what I think made it out the worst. But anyways, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button and subscribe for more Warhammer 40k content like this. And also, tomorrow on my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/almostprogaming, I will be streaming a game of 9th edition with the new points costs. I'm pretty sure we're doing Imperial Fist versus Dark Angels, but it is subject to change. I might actually try Drukhari because I want to try out some stuff with them now. But yeah, we will see. But yeah, anyways, tune in for that stream tomorrow if you want to watch me play a game of 9th edition with these new points and with the new rules. So yeah, thanks again for watching, everybody, and I will see you in the next video. Happy wargaming.